where the magic happens, baby. It's where the magic happens. So that's good. You want to do a show tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Should I start now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's time once again for another exciting edition of Real Raw Recovery. I'm Joe Tilley in Clarington, Ontario.
I'm Tyler Tilley in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
And so let's start this with the moment of silence, followed by the Serenity We prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. Have you got anything on your craw this week?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go all in and then ask for forgiveness later if necessary. If you cross the line. Okay. Okay. So there's two subjects I want to tackle with you, and
yeah,
I also want to present it in a way that is not an attack on you.
Right.
And I say that with all sincerity. So what I would like to do is I would like to tackle, you touched on one thing that I just wrote it down, is on fear. And then the other point that is more interesting to me is advice. So I'm gonna actually, I was gonna leave it up to you, but I'm gonna say I would like to touch on the subject of advice.
Yeah.
And where it came from is from your review.
Yeah.
So maybe while I'm looking for it, can you just explain what the review is quickly in a summary?
Okay. So every day I do a review of my day. I do a written review and I share it with my sponsor, a few of my sponsees, and you. And what it is, and it's great to share with you because it kind of lets you know where I'm at in the world and all that stuff. You can keep updated in my life and where I'm at. But I review, what my day was like, and where I was, if I had to make any amends, where I had to do that. What did I read today, and then what did I get out of the readings, and then so it's basically a review of my day. Did I harm anybody? Do I owe an amends? Did I make an amends? That's it. Yeah.
And so you would also, like, another heading of this is a step 10, right?
Yeah. It's a step 10. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the questions that a reoccurring question in every review, it says, did I pause when agitated or in doubt and ask for the right thought or action? And then
yes.
you wrote yes, and resisted the desire to offer advice. And so when I read that, I said probably out loud, why? Like, but so here's what I want to jump into. So before I go in attack mode, I can appreciate, I just want to set the table here a little bit. I can appreciate that you pause, and I really believe in pausing and taking a moment or many and then responding versus reacting. But before I give my 2 cents, why is resisting the desire to offer advice a
defect?
No, a commendable quality.
Oh, actually, yeah, resisting. Why is resisting? Okay, I'll tell you why. So there's a lot of times when I can be helpful and offer my experience, and I can be very helpful. And sometimes if people ask me for my advice on a certain thing, I can offer it. But sometimes I'll offer advice that's unsolicited. And what the problem is with that is I'm not a therapist, right? So when a sponsee is telling me something that is, you know, kind of a, kind of you know, pretty personal, deep stuff that is, you know, I when they're telling me stuff that is, I think is you know, is really, I'm glad that I'm really happy that they share with me. I'm really happy that they trust me. And sometimes it's best for me just to listen and for them to work out their own path, their own you know, journey, and to figure out what it is that they have to do to work that out rather than have me tell them. Because if I tell them, sometimes if I tell them, I don't know what the hell I'm telling them. I'm not a therapist. So you know, it's sometimes it's better for me just to listen. And I thought about offering this one guy advice on something. And then I thought, no, just listen some more. Just listen some more. And you know what? And by listening some more and letting him talk some more, he basically found his own solution. And I thought, that's awesome, because I really wanted to step in there and offer advice, and I wouldn't have been listening. And so by offering advice and not listening, I'm, you know, that individual didn't get a chance to find his own solution, which is, you know, which is kind of what, along the lines of what I would have offered in terms of advice. But it's better when he finds the solution for himself. And I think you're more likely to it's more likely to really resonate, sink deeply, and become, you know, part of change for you if you allow yourself to find your own solution. So that's why. I mean, there are a lot of times when I don't come in there with advice. I just let people talk and I listen. I think it's really helpful when I do that. And sometimes there's specific, you know, events or issues that a person has, and if I offer them advice on that particular thing, I'm talking out of school. Like I don't have experience in that, so I shouldn't be offering advice on it. If I've got experience on it, I don't mind offering advice. If I you know, if they're looking for it. Because what happens is I find I'm doing all the talking. So you see why that makes sense. But there are times when I have advice based on my own experience, which is, I think, very valuable. And you know, even then I won't offer it unless it's unless somebody seeks it. And you know, but then sometimes I will offer without asking, and I don't know.
I'm glad I threw it to you first, because you kind of you clarified it in a way that I thought that sounds very wise, and I fully operate very similarly. I just when I guess for me is, if I'm talking to somebody and we're speaking freely, I really like to set, I really typically, when I'm speaking freely with somebody, I also really enjoy their company.
Yeah.
And I value, so I guess, so what you just, I just need to say this again. What you just said is very wise, based on the context and who you're speaking with, is extremely valuable, a valuable perspective,
Advice.
and advice. But and I really believe 100% what you just said. So I'm not objecting to that. So for you to explain it in that way, I don't have any sort of objections. But the only
Right.
I was, the context is when I read resisted, as in like I'm holding myself back from sharing freely with another. And if it comes out in let's see the way I like to operate or conduct a conversation is, if you were to give me advice that was unsolicited, I would really love to break
Yeah.
it down, especially if I had objected to it. So
Right. Okay.
I don't want you to go, oh, I better not say that, because all of a sudden it's like, what kind of fucking conversation are you having? And
Yeah.
what kind of conversation are you like are we having if you're going to go like, I'm not going to say that because I have no experience of it, but like it's like, well, now we're not speaking freely, and now we have restraints, and we're going to have like, and don't get me wrong, maybe I was going to say some sort of ridiculous joke that was just offensive. So yes, I think sometimes there's a form of restraint that, you want to think before you speak. But I
Yeah.
also, like, when we speak, I really don't like, I would rather say something foolish and go, you know what, I just 2 minutes ago I said something really foolish and I don't stand behind what I said. I love that ability to do that. And if I'm talking to somebody that I can't do that with, and I have to watch what I'm saying and watch the advice I'm giving people, it's like, oh my God, what kind of world? Like, so you are a therapist, because if you have to watch what you say and conduct yourself with restraint, well, then you're acting in a role that is some sort of guide or mentorship, that, because if you could just speak freely without worrying what you're going to say to another, well, then you're putting yourself in a
Yeah. No.
bizarre
Yeah. Yeah. I
position.
agree with you. Actually, I agree 100%. I agree with you, because if you are having a conversation, and with somebody, and it's like, it can be a sponsee, it can be anybody, it can be another person in recovery, or it can be just anybody, and but it's somebody you have good connection with, and you're having a conversation, and you share something that sounds like advice, or maybe it's just advice to the other person, and yeah, and then you can roll it back. You can say, oh, yeah, yeah, sorry, man, that's not my business. I can retract that. It's not a hard thing to do, and you can do that anytime. I agree with you. So so you're right. So if I'm resisting the urge to offer advice, sometimes it's like not necessary to do that, but sometimes it is, right. Sometimes I think it's like, oh, it's like resisting the urge to gossip, which I love it when I'm able to do that, and not so happy when I don't. Like, uh, somebody says something about somebody, and I got a little bit of juice here, and I'm going to say it, and I go, no, God, no, stop, 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 and I don't do it. I feel better. I feel much better when I don't do that. And then on the occasion when I don't bite my tongue, when I don't resist that urge, doesn't feel good. But in this particular case, I think it was a good thing. By not offering the advice that I had in mind, that was sort of had in mind, I noticed that also leading up to that, a couple of times I had stepped in, and I'm going, shh, Joe, you need to listen more. You need to listen more. And so then I've got this desire to offer advice, and I'm going to do that too. And then I go, no, you're going to listen more. You're going to listen more. And I resisted that urge, and by resisting that urge, I think it worked out really well. So that was my point in that. And I think, it's hard to explain that when I'm doing my review, right, without writing a story about it. So anyway,
So my I would still, you're using discernment, you're using your brain to decide when to speak and when to listen,
Hmm.
right? Like, so you'll get an idea, or you'll get motivated, or you'll have a desire to share your input,
Yeah.
and you'll then classify it as, well, that's just advice, so therefore
Hmm.
I'm going to end. Or you'll, as you just said, you're speaking too much and that you need to listen more. So
Yeah.
you're using your brain to navigate that conversation, which is,
Right.
that's why I'm 100% on board with your opening statements about how to navigate, especially depending on who you're speaking with. But it would all, I think it comes back to, like, with your own kind of logic, like if you're just, like, to quote you probably verbatim, like a child of God, and you decide to let your mouth run, isn't that then just like what that person needed to hear? If you trust that everything's working out.
Now, you see, my experience in life has taught me this. Um, I sometimes I've let my mouth run and found myself all of a sudden now I'm saying shit that I don't really even know. Like, my mouth is just running, and I'm saying now I'm saying shit that I don't even know, and then afterwards I don't feel really good about it. And then so now I learned from that experience. I can learn from that experience and think next time, listen more. And over time, I'm able to navigate that as you said, navigate that conversation, um, probably more helpfully than I would have earlier, in my life when I wasn't when I couldn't even listen, right? I couldn't listen, and you know, I was so busy formulating my own thoughts that I can't even hear what you're saying. So that's kind of how the evolution is taking place now. I've got enough experience to know that, God, I've seen it happen so many times that people can find their own answers if I let them talk. And then sometimes they find an answer. They go, "Oh, wow, that's great! What a great idea!" Wasn't the idea I had? It was way better than the idea I had. So if I had offered them the advice that I had before I let them talk, then they would have missed out on really, first of all, really knowing it at a soul level, because that's what happens when you get to figure it out for yourself as opposed to have somebody tell you. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is you get a solution that's better than the one I would have offered.
So I would object there, because you're putting it into you're still controlling. This is you are
Nah, not really.
100%.
How are you controlling if you're allowing the other person to find their own answer? How's that controlling?
That's what control is. Like, that's a
Allowing other people to find their own answers is controlling.
yes.
Well, then I want to be a control freak.
You are. That's the name of this podcast. You have to really. I would really like you to listen to what I'm saying.
Okay.
But I think that's the name of this
Trying to listen.
podcast. Is this episode is Control Freak.
Okay.
You making a decision not to speak is making a decision.
Correct.
You're adding a story, that a narrative that they're finding their own answers. They're either having a conversation with you or not. You're like, I'm imagining, with the context you're giving me, you're not sitting on the top of a mountain for 24 hours and not eating or speaking. No, like you're engaged with this person. You're sitting down with them.
Yeah.
There's an interaction of some sort. You're deciding when to speak and when to hold back. You're deciding when to marinate over something and when to offer or where to take the conversation next. And if you decide to withhold,
Not even that. No. I'm not deciding where to take conversation next. No, I'm not. That's I'm allowing that to unfold naturally and organically. Yeah, I'm not controlling the conversation.
you're controlling it right now.
How?
I said, I need you to listen
Mm-hmm.
to what I'm saying, and you're telling me that you're not that. So like your interjections and your input is your form of control.
Okay.
You
Continue.
object.
Yeah. Okay.
Objected to what
All
I'm
right.
saying.
Continue. Yeah. Yeah.
You objected to what I'm saying. Therefore, like what I'm saying is not you're not. It's not agreeing with you, and you're throwing
No,
in
it's not
there.
agreeing with me. That's right. I'm not agreeing with it, but that's okay. Continue.
Right. So if you were to just again, if you were having an inspired conversation and you were able to let go and just engage in the conversation without reservation, and you were to end up giving advice and sharing anecdotes and experience all bundled in one in a
Yeah.
conversation, and that person was able to hear your input, and you can classify it whatever you want, experience, advice, it's all the same. It's just you. Like it's you. I'm engaging with you right now. So whether you want to, well, here's advice and this is experience and this is just an anecdote and this is okay, whatever. That's you telling me this information. Now I'm going to gather that information you're giving to me. Hopefully, like I'm engaged. I'm receiving the information you're giving me. And now I'm going to use my own discernment and my own ability to sift through the information you're giving me to either attach onto some details or to let them go or to incubate them or to marinate on what you're suggesting. And then I will go do what I'm going to do anyway. So the story you're creating is that I'm going to let them find their own answers is a story. By me withholding my advice, anecdotes, experience, stories, jokes, they are going to then talk out loud to it could be a brick wall and then create their own answers. But if you were to say something on the other side of the coin and it was just a mouthful of words that you believe needed to be said, in whether no matter where it came from, you're imagining that could be a negative impact on that individual, therefore taking away all their own agency and their own discernment, because what you're imagining, you're saying isn't good for them or helpful, useful, because that's all coming from the word resisted that I read from your earlier review. So that's why I was attacking that specifically. I immediately opened the floor to say, can you explain your side of that before I even get going? And I really believe that pauses and letting things sit for a moment are really important. But the word I was attacking and why I said why is when I go, hey, I don't want to say this because it will then affect them. But this on the flip side is if I don't say it, I'm assuming I'm taking full control by saying, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to listen more. I'm going to listen more. And I'm going to assume that I'm going to let them figure out as if they wouldn't have figured out that solution if you did offer your advice. So you're directing everything here. You're just making decisions. You're navigating the conversation. You can say organically or not. Like, okay, we're having I didn't know what I was going to say 5 minutes ago, but I did know like what the thorn in my side was about that. So I was just, it's not even, my final thing is, it's not, it's me sharing right now freely with you without reservation or concern for what I'm saying may misdirect you or affect you negatively. I'm imagining that you're your own person that can make their own decisions and come to conclusions and come to your own, find your answers or hear my answers and utilize them. But if I just resist from what I'm saying, resist something that especially in a free conversation or an open conversation,
Yeah. I think there's a big difference between an experience and advice. So when I'm offering advice with that's not based on experience, I think that's when I need to let that go. When I'm offering experience, or say advice based on experience, that's a different situation. Like it's kind of like imagining what I would do in that situation, and is different than what I actually did in the same situation. Because I don't really know what I do in that situation. To be honest with you, I don't know. So I could have offered advice, or I could have just let the person talk some more and find a solution on their own. So I mean, it's all in discernment. Everything's discernment, and everything's control, I suppose, to a degree. No matter which conversation you're having, what when, where, whatever. Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, though, when we talk about our issues, whatever they are, whatever stuff we're going through, when we talk about it, and we have a chance to talk about it, it gets better. When we write it down, it gets smaller. All those things tend to work. You know, if I got an issue and I talk about it, I'm going to be in a lot better shape than if I try to hold it in. So I'm glad that he was sharing with me. I'm glad that we have that relationship. So it's that's kind of where it's at.
I just need to, and then I can let it go. It's just my final, I've already said that, but my, just my,
Epilogue.
the
Call the
last,
epilogue.
yeah, the last thoughts are that I'm not now. I'm shifting the conversation to what we're having right now, and I'm imagining you either giving me advice or I'm imagining me resisting saying certain things. And what I'm really questioning is that if you were to give me advice, I could say that's ridiculous. Let's investigate. Where is that? Where did? And I would even change the word from advice to idea. Where did that idea come from, and why do you think it's valid, or what validity does it have, and why were you amped to share it with me? Why were you? Why did you feel it was valuable? And then breaking that, and I'm like, you know what? I did get something from that because I'm going to go do the exact opposite of what you just suggested.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to, you know what? That sounds brilliant. And I'm going to add on to it a little bit. Because if you even shift the words around by saying, okay, let's scrap the word advice, and now let's go with an idea you had. And you got, and then the last thought is that one kick that I'm on right now is just, this is not revolutionary information, but it's just something I'm investigating more, is that I've always, like, I'm revisiting the concept of experience. So what I'm really looking at is that it's one thing to go put my hand on a burner and then like an oven, the top of an oven, like a burner, and it
Mm-hmm.
burns my hand. And then now I share to everyone that, hey, if you touch that, it'll burn your hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also find it just equally as valuable if I watch someone else put their hand on the burner, that I can now share that information as well. I don't need to I don't need firsthand knowledge of putting my hand on a burner to go to someone else and say, don't put your hand on the burner. I don't need to go,
Mm-hmm.
well, why did you put your hand on the burner? No, but I watched someone else burn their hand to a crisp.
Yeah,
That
it was
information,
horrible.
and that information is just as valuable as if I had did it, as long as it's accurately uh, kind of like there's an accurate inventory of that situation. I feel that my experience from others is just as valid as my own, because
Mm-hmm.
it has worked out that way time and time again. There's a few times I'm wrong, like, oh,
Right.
my experience was different than so and so's. But when you're dealing with like simple mathematics or like basic human problems, there's a lot of that can go a long way. And even if someone's told me, hey, I watched someone else put their hand on a burner, that
Mm-hmm.
information is valid. So now it becomes like, it's not so much like I wouldn't just call it advice. It's like uh, that's still, I would still put that in the category of experience and knowledge and valuable information to share to another. And I don't think I would resist that information, even though it's not firsthand.
Yeah, no, and I think that's I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, because that's a kind of a different situation. But I think, when you talked about discernment, and you talked about, there are times when there's certain stuff you maybe you just decide that it's better the person speak a little more about it before you offer any advice on it. And when I do that, quite often, I'm really glad that I did. Yeah, because sometimes I can talk too much, and after I'm finished talking, I can think to myself, "You talk too much. A lot of talking, not too much listening."
I think that depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, true. That's true. Well, it depends who you're talking to and the situation, because it can vary from time to time, to person. Yeah, but I do find myself from time to time thinking to myself, "Okay, now it's time to listen. You've talked a lot."
Do you ever say,
So
man, I love listening to myself speak?
I don't say that, but I think I believe it, because sometimes I amaze myself, right? Sometimes I blow myself away with how much I know,
I got to
and I
write
got to
this
hear you.
shit down.
I got to talk more. No, I can't stop talking now. You listen to me. What I'm saying is unbelievable.
And you should take notes.
Yeah, everybody, pay attention. I've got more to say here. Yeah. Okay, you ready to wrap it up?
Yep, I got to go too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. For the serenity prayer, we pray. God,
God.
grant us the serenity
Identity
to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. I love you.
I love you too.